Good evening, my fellow classmates, and good evening, Mr. Strack. Today I'll be informing the class about nicotine on the human body. There has been a decrease in cigarette consumption in the last decade, however, it's being replaced with things like vaping and nicotine pouches. The reason why I'm interested in this is because I've seen it in the healthcare system, many workers using it, from doctors, nurses, paramedics, and even EMTs alike. I'm not here to judge anyone who's addicted to nicotine, but more so explore the function of nicotine in the body. We'll explore what nicotine is as a chemical compound, who is using nicotine, and the side effects and effects of nicotine in the body. So what is nicotine? According to the National Library of Medicine, nicotine is a highly toxic alkaloid which has prototypical agonist effects on the nicotinin chlorogenic receptors, which causes dramatic stimulation in neurons and blocks any synaptic transmissions. In layman terms, nicotine enters the brain, reacts with nicotine receptors at the reward center, which then causes the release of dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter which has a large array of jobs that it provides for the body, which we'll explore later on. Now, let's see who consumes nicotine. About 15% of Americans consume nicotine. The largest population who uses it are Native Americans, about 21% of their population, with the lowest amount are Asian Americans at 7%. The concerning number of nicotine consumption is the youth. From 12 to 17, about 5% use nicotine. This is 5% way too many, and this is not something that we can just brush away. Young children should not be using nicotine. Now, there are social and cultural aspects to nicotine. Me, myself, I'm Bengali, I'm brown, I've seen the brown community, do things like hookah, so I can understand why it becomes a big part of some people's, everyday lives. But, we have to understand what nicotine does to the body first, so we can help people understand why they shouldn't do it. So what is nicotine doing to the body? We have to understand that nicotine affects and ultimately wants to produce dopamine. So let's see what dopamine does. Dopamine affects your sleep, your attention, your memory, your pleasure center, your learning center, your cardiovascular controls. It has a large effect on your body. This is why you don't want to be tinkering with it or messing around with it, because you don't want to cause issues. Because if you're affecting levels of dopamine, low amounts can cause ADHD and Parkinson's disease. High amounts can cause obesity and mania. And if you keep fluctuating in between your dopamine levels, you can have schizophrenia. This is why nicotine has a negative effect. It is removing the body's natural ability to cycle dopamine and is introducing an artificial method of controlling dopamine production. This is why many people have these issues with dopamine and end up with health issues, because you don't want to remove your body's natural cycle of producing dopamine with this new artificial method and causing cravings of dopamine in your body, because your body needs dopamine and you want it to produce it on its own. So from my speech and from all the information I've provided, I hope we all can take away that what nicotine does to the body, so we can inform people that we know, or maybe even yourselves, of why they should quit nicotine consumption. We don't want to judge these users of nicotine, because at the end of the day, our goal is to help them quit. And judging them will not help them as much. But informing them of what nicotine does to the body and how dopamine is a very important function of the body that we cannot be tinkering with for short-ended goals is something that, once they are aware of, should help them. This is for the reason we should continue with information and less judging. Help family members, help your fellow classmates, even help yourself understand that you need to preserve your nicotine regulation and you need to protect the dopamine production in your brain. For that, you should, explore alternative stimulants. Coffee does a lot for stimulation. You can even, look into other forms like ashwagandha or lion's mane. The chemicals that don't affect your dopamine production, because at the end of the day, we want to stay as healthy individuals and continue to prosper. Thank you very much. I hope you have learned something from my speech today, and that you can go use my information that I provided outside in the real world. You guys have a good night.